Is Ilorin a Yoruba land? Of course it is. It is ridiculous that this fact has become debatable. It is as laughable as the claim by some that Lagos is not a Yoruba land. But it isn't their fault, especially in the case of Ilorin. Let us blame Afonja, who was so blindfolded by his short-sighted ambition that he applied an everlasting solution to a temporary problem. But who is this Afonja? Afonja was the Ààrẹ Ọ̀nà Kakanfò of Ilorin during the reign of Aláàfin Adébọ̀ of Ọ̀yọ́. The title Ààrẹ Ọ̀nà Kakanfò is equivalent to what we now call Field Marshal, the highest-ranking military personnel, or the chief military leader. The constitution then was that the Aláàfin and the Ààrẹ Ọ̀nà Kakanfò must not come from the same city. And since the Aláàfin was always from Ọ̀yọ́, the Kakanfò must come from another kingdom under Ọ̀yọ́. And so in the case of Afonja, the Kakanfò was from Ilorin. Even the name itself, Ilorin, gives it off as a Yoruba land. In those days, certain places were named after their economic inputs. Ilorin is a land with abundant iron ore, and this was very instrumental to the Yoruba practice of iron smelting, which is why they called the place Ilorin, literally meaning iron grinding, that is, iron smelting. Similarly, if you go to Ibadan, you will find another place named after what it produces. That place is called Eleta. Eta is the Yoruba word for iron ore. But how did it happen that a Yoruba land such as Ilorin now has an emir over it? And so many Fulanis, to the extent that these Fulanis are now claiming that the land is not a Yoruba land. Before I answer that question, let me ask another one. If Ilorin isn't a Yoruba land, then whose land is it? The Fulanis? Now to the first question. This is the history of Ilorin. Ilorin was founded by a Yoruba man called Laderin. This Laderin was the great-grandfather of Afonja. Afonja had risen to prominence since the dark days of Bashorunga. Aláàfin Abiodun succeeded in killing Bashorunga before he himself died in 1789. After Abiodun, Aole Arugogon became Aláàfin. He was a tall, handsome man but also a weakling. And so during his reign, evil and wickedness enveloped the whole of Oyo Empire. Things began to fall apart. A particular man called Oyabi was the Ààrẹ Ọ̀nà Kakanfò at this time, but after he died, Afonja took the title by force. This made him and the Aláàfin enemies of themselves. Afonja became more and more egotistical and power drunk. Through his influence, he schemed with other important chiefs and they forced the Aláàfin to commit suicide. Adébọ̀ then became the next Aláàfin. But even this Aláàfin was weaker than the previous one. He was just a nominal king. He was without real authority. Afonja hated Adébọ̀ because he wanted to become Aláàfin, but the Oyomesi chose Adébọ̀ over him. He then decided to frustrate Adébọ̀ into powerlessness. He started by declaring Ilorin independent from Oyo, and many other kingdoms under Oyo followed this example and seceded. They all stopped paying tribute to Oyo, and the authority of Oyo began to weaken. The Aláàfin was no longer respected. He was no longer feared. To further crush the authority of the Oyo Empire, Afonja decided to expand Ilorin from a small town into a big city. His plan was to build a city that would be bigger and more powerful than the capital of the Yoruba land, Oyo Ile. This means he had to conquer the towns within the vicinity of Ilorin. In order to achieve all this, Afonja thought he needed military might. This was when he made a mistake that he himself never lived to regret for long. A mistake that has forever affected the evolution of the Yoruba people. Afonja invited his Muslim and Fulani friend Alimi to Ilorin and made him his priest. To the Yorubas of that time, that was an abomination. An Ifa priest should be the priest of a Yoruba ruler, not a Muslim cleric. But who dared question Afonja? Alimi responded by coming to Ilorin with his many Hausa slaves. Note that the Fulanis had long subjugated the Hausa people before this period. Afonja also invited another of his Muslim friends to Ilorin. This other friend was a rich man called Sholagberu. He named his large quarters Okesuno. Ilorin began attracting Muslims from far and near. Most of them were Hausa, Fulani, Bariba and Nupe slaves. This was how Ilorin began turning into what it is today. This period marked the beginning of jihad in Yoruba land. These Muslim slaves called themselves Jama, and that is what we call Jomon. Afonja began using them as his bodyguards and soldiers. He made them so powerful that they could literally do and undo. The Jomons became marauders, they became thieves, they became terrorists, and they also became so holy that even Afonja himself began being seen as a sinner. Afonja failed to notice the evils that these Jomons were perpetrating, and when he eventually did, it was too late for him. Before he could bring himself to attack the Jamas, they attacked him. Afonja fought bravely like a hero, but he fought alone because he had no friends. He was killed by the Jomons and was burnt to ashes. And then Alimi, that Fulani priest, took over the rulership of Ilorin. So again I ask, if Ilorin does not originally belong to the Yoruba, to whom does it belong? And what name did they give to the land? Waashere.